Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to my channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future terrifying stories. Please make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video. I greatly appreciate it when you guys like these videos, because it gives my channel a chance to reach so many more viewers. If you would like to have your story featured on an upcoming video, please make sure to email it to me. My email will be in the description box below at the end of the video. Sit back and relax, and let me scare the hell out of you. A little context. I'm a 19-year-old female and moved back into my mother's house late last year. I have a neighbor, a 50 to 60-year-old male, who I have caught watching me almost every day for the past few months. The way our houses are laid out is a little confusing. My backyard ends on the side of his house and yard, so the back of my house is pointed to the side of his. My room's window faces the back on ground level, so I have a direct view of his side property. What he will do is stand outside when he smokes, and the whole time his body will be facing my direction. When I first started noticing it, I shrugged it off as him looking at the sky or mountains behind my house. But after a while I noticed he didn't try to look in any other direction when I was in my room. Soon it was just about every day I could count on seeing him outside looking into my window and yard. I was getting sick of it. I started by hiding when I would see him, then shutting the blinds on him and opening them up after he left. The man knew I had noticed him. He would scurry away behind the corner of his house when I protested. At this point, he knows I've seen him multiple times and I don't like him. Now, yesterday was different. I had taken the screen out of my window so the cats could come in and out as they please. My younger brother was in the back working on our garden, and I was leaning out the window chatting with him. I looked up and saw the guy, half hidden behind his house, facing right towards me. My annoyance and anger had reached a breaking point. I yelled at him across both properties to stop staring, and he scurried away behind his little corner. My brother and I continued our conversation as it seemed he had gotten the hint. I was wrong. I kept an eye out for him in that corner. I saw him again. This time just the top of his head and eyes as he concealed his body behind his house and leaned as far as he could. My blood ran cold. This guy, who I don't even know and is 3 times my age, is so desperate just to look at me that he can't stop even after being yelled at. I yelled again and he hid again, not saying a single word. I was trying to wrap up the conversation between me and my brother so I could shut my window and hide. Once again I see him, just his head and eyes, staring. I screamed this time and then slammed my window. I wasn't planning on making this post until I saw him doing it again. My window was shut and he ran off before I could yell again. I felt sick to my stomach. The man won't get the hint. I don't know what to do. I like keeping my blinds open during the day, since I have a cacti in my room that needs light, not to mention the lights in my room don't work, so I have to use sunlight anyway. I shouldn't have to change my routine because of a creep, but I don't think I can report him to the police because he's staying on his property, and I don't know if I can legally record him if he is in his own yard. I want to knock on his door and tell his wife, but my mom advised me against it. I don't think me giving him a stern talk will do anything other than fuel whatever fantasies he has. Could be dangerous too. This situation is starting to affect my mental health. I'll wake up in the middle of the night convinced someone is right outside looking at me. I can't even change my clothes in my own room anymore, because I feel like he's already caught a peek. I don't think ignoring him is an option I can continue. Is there even a way I can help my situation? Update. Oh my God, I'm shaking. He was outside shirtless, smoking a cigarette. He could tell I saw him. He scurried away and then came back again. I grabbed my camera on Snapchat. I just screamed at him and threatened to call the cops, and he argued back. I think I got the recording, but my phone is so old and laggy that I can't tell if it's saved. I called my mom and I told her I was calling the cops. She told me she would come back home and talk to me about it before we do. She was very brief. I think I'm going to head to a friend's house until my mom gets home, so I won't be able to respond to comments very well. Wish me luck. This happened to a group of my friends and I on a camping expedition for an award program. It was the second day, and we were coming to the end of our 6-hour walk. We were walking across a small country road. The nearest house was pretty far behind us and way out of earshot. At the end of the country road was a bridleway that ran perpendicular, probably about 2 miles from a nearby village. As we were approaching the bridleway, an unmarked white van came up the road, and instead of stopping, he pulled up right in front of us. The width of the van was about that of the country road, so he couldn't get past. He rolled down his window and started asking us questions. It wasn't uncommon for the locals to ask us questions or give us words of encouragement, but this guy just didn't sit right with me. Being an all-female group, and not to mention all of us were incredibly exhausted, this was a concern of mine. I brushed it off since it didn't seem to worry anyone else. I figured I had just watched too many true crime documentaries. He asked us what we were doing, as many people had, and we explained the award program we were on. His questions began relatively normal and small talkish, but they began to get more specific. So, you're camping out tonight then? We replied and said that we were, ready for him to drive off and we could continue on our route. Where's your campsite? This sent shivers down my spine. This may have not been anything sinister, but that was none of his business. I feigned ignorance, as if I didn't know where the campsite was, and gestured vaguely in the opposite direction of the site. Again, I was just expecting him to shrug this off and go about his day, but no. Surely you must know where your campsite is. This is when one of my friends blurted out the name of the campsite. I froze for a second, but luckily he didn't hear this. He began to ask us questions like, is it near X? Is it that way? What does it look like? This was far too specific for my liking, so I maintained I had no idea. Eventually he began to drive away, looking strangely disappointed, without saying anything. We waited until he was a ways down the road before we continued walking, a little shaken. We made it back to the campsite and reported it to the counselor. I didn't get any sleep that night. Maybe I was overreacting, but I dread to think what could have happened. I've held off on sharing this story for a few years now because of how bad it frightened me. However, reading other people's experiences on Reddit has given me the confidence to share my story and not fear judgment. A few years ago, my partner and I decided to take a trip to California to see some of the state parks, ghost towns, and off the beaten path things that I don't get a lot of tourist traffic. For the first leg of the trip, everything went great. We camped out in our car, found some really great picturesque landscapes, creepy ghost towns, scenic views, and forgotten highways. I absolutely loved it. After about a week and a half on the road, we decided it was time to start heading back to Oregon, our home base, but we decided to take the scenic route for some of it, instead of just driving straight home on the I-5. Our meandering path home took us to Death Valley, where there was a short hike to a beautiful waterfall we had seen online and wanted to do it before heading back. In lieu of my experiences, I've chosen not to share the name for everybody's safety. We found the trailhead without issue and began the mile hike to the waterfall. Death Valley is pretty desolate, and I'm not going to lie, it's a creepy place that spooked me bad on more than one occasion, but something about this trail was different, sinister even. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I couldn't hear anybody around us, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. There were no cars at the trailhead when we got there, so I figured we were alone, but I didn't feel that way. The feeling persisted until we reached the end of the mile hike and saw the waterfall. We sat for a moment, took a few pictures, and started hiking back towards the car. I still felt like something was wrong. I felt eyes on me and had a feeling of dread, for seemingly no reason at all. I tried to shake it off, but I just couldn't. I started walking a little quicker to our car. We got there without incident and started throwing our hiking poles and water bottles into the back seat of the car. I noticed there was a black SUV with limo-tinted windows parked next to us in the trailhead parking lot. I didn't see anyone around it, and it didn't seem like anyone was in it either. But where was the driver? The only place the driver could have been was on the same trail as my partner and I, but I hadn't seen or heard the driver on the trail. It was an out and back trail with steep rocky cliffs on either side of the trail, so the chances of me seeing the driver were pretty high, and the chances of him being off the trail were pretty slim, as the undergrowth was extremely heavy until you got to the cliffside. I'm also certain I would have heard somebody crashing through the undergrowth near the trail. As I was thinking about this and getting more and more anxious, I see a huge man emerge silently from the bushes next to the trail and waterfall. When I say silently, I mean it. He made no noise at all. He was easily 6'4" to 6'6" and very strong looking, covered in what my partner believes are criminal tattoos. The man had a baseball cap pulled down low over his sunglasses, a long full beard, some kind of a rifle slung across his back, and a large hunting knife on his belt. Had he been out there at the falls with us the whole time? If so, why hadn't I heard or seen him? He was holding what appeared to be a cell phone in his hands and waving down my partner. My partner is a 5'5" and skinny. In a silent panic, I grabbed him by the arm to keep him from getting too close to the man. I realize now that this huge man had a gun, and distance to him was irrelevant, but as I said, I was in panic mode. The man said that he had found this cell phone, the one in his hands near the waterfall, and didn't want us to leave without it. We both quickly checked our pockets. We realized we both had our cell phones. We both assumed at the same time that this was some sort of a setup for a robbery or something far more sinister. We jumped into the car, fired her up, and drove up the dirt road as quick as we could. The man just stared at us through the rear window as we drove off. It terrifies me to think that he was out there with us the whole time we were hiking, and we didn't hear him, see him, or even know he was there. How many other times has something like this happened to me? I never would have known the man was out there with us had he not chosen to make his presence known. I'm not going to lie. It really made me think twice about hiking alone in the woods or in an isolated and desolate areas. I also find myself wondering what would have happened had we chosen to engage with him. Were there more people with him? What would have happened to us? I'm not going to lie. I've had nightmares about this man in several instances since this happened. I'm truly glad I trusted my gut. Thank you for reading. I've always gotten those "you have won a free hotel trip" or card extended warranty phone calls, but this one was out of the norm. I've gotten into the habit of answering scam calls and trolling the administrators you can talk to. I'd start singing a song or something until they hung up the phone. I would play noises, but recently I got an odd phone call. I was scrolling on my phone as usual till I got a call from New Zealand. I answered it as usual, and it talked about stores and food places near me. I didn't think it was odd because every store has at least 2 other locations. I pressed 1 to troll as usual until somebody answered and immediately started talking. They said, "Hey, saw you answered," and I went to the time-wasting things. He told me, "Stop playing around," and started spouting numbers I didn't know. I looked up the numbers, and they were for my computer's IP address. I hung up and got called about 2 more times before the calls ceased. I don't know if it's some guy trolling me or an audio recording. What do you think? Last night at 12 a.m. I was laying in bed and I heard a faint sound of a baby crying. I don't live in an apartment, and the sound was coming from my brother's room. I checked to see if both of them were okay, and one was missing. There was a storm that night, so I thought my brother was startled and went to sleep with my parents. I checked to make sure, and sure enough, he was sound asleep in the bed, even though he was just crying 20 seconds ago. I went back to bed, but once I closed my eyes, I heard the baby crying again, except on the right side of my house. It was very faint, and it sounded like it could be outside or in one of the rooms in my house. I got up and checked everywhere. I even looked outside during the storm, but I found nothing, not even one of my closest friends. Believe me, I just want an explanation. Is this a ghost or what? Is there some psychology behind it? I'm begging someone to help me. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the very end of the video. And if you're not subscribed now, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please feel free to subscribe for future content. I look forward to hearing from all of my new subscribers in the comments section. Until we meet again, stay safe and stay sinful.